The knock came at 9:47 p.m., sharp enough to cut through the quiet and stop Emily Carter mid-step. Her phone was in her hand, screen glowing with an unread message she already knew she wouldn't answer. Outside, rain tapped against the windows of her small Portland house, steady and cold, like time reminding her it hadn't stopped just because her life had. Emily hadn't expected anyone. She hadn't wanted anyone. For weeks, nights had all looked the same. Leftover dinners, muted. Television noise, long pauses where conversations used to live. Her marriage wasn't officially over, but it was already gone. Daniel's side of the closet was empty. His coffee mug was missing from the rack. Even the house seemed to know he wasn't coming back. The knock came again, slower this time almost. Unsure. Emily's first thought was to ignore it. Nothing good ever came from late-night knocks. She had learned that after turning 35, after learning that surprises often carried weight instead of joy. Still, something pulled at her chest, a quiet pressure that made her walk toward the door before her mind caught up when she opened it. The past stood right in front of her. Michael Hayes was on her porch, rain darkening his jacket, hair damp, eyes steady but cautious. He looked older than she remembered, not in a bad way, just more real. Like life had touched him in the same places it had touched her. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Emily felt the air leave her lungs. This was not a ghost. This was not a coincidence she could laugh off. This was a man she had once almost loved, standing at her door like he belonged there. "I know it's late," Michael said. His voice was calm but careful. "I can go if this isn't okay." Emily's mind raced. Michael wasn't just an old friend. He was a reminder of a time when her heart had felt awake. Back when Daniel still came home early. Back when dinners were shared instead of reheated. Back when she believed loneliness was something other people dealt with. "How did you find me?" she asked, her voice quieter than she intended. Michael glanced down the street, then back at her. "Daniel told me where you were living now. We ran into each other last week." The sound of her husband's name hit her harder than the rain. Daniel had moved out months ago, but hearing his name still carried a strange mix of familiarity and distance. "Is he okay?" Emily asked before she could stop herself. Michael nodded. Peacefully. The word felt too clean for what their marriage had become. Emily stepped aside without fully deciding. You should come in," she said. The moment Michael crossed the doorway, something shifted. The house felt different, like it recognized him, like it remembered the quiet dinners he had once joined, the easy laughs. The way his attention had lingered just a second longer than it should have. They stood awkwardly in the living room. Emily realized she didn't know what to do with her. Hands, she gestured toward the couch. "Do you want coffee or tea?" "Coffee's fine," Michael said. She moved quickly, more out of nerves than kindness. The kitchen light buzzed softly as she filled the kettle. Her heart was beating too fast, and she hated that. She had promised herself she wouldn't let old emotions sneak up on her again. When she returned, Michael was standing near the bookshelf looking at framed photos. Smiling versions of herself she barely recognized now. "I shouldn't be here," Michael said when she handed him the mug. "Then why are you?" she asked, sitting across from him. Michael held the cup but didn't drink. "'Cause I kept thinking about you. And when I heard your marriage ended, didn't want to regret staying silent again." Emily leaned back, crossing her arms, not defensively, but carefully. "Michael, years ago, we were already close to crossing lines." "I know," he said quickly, "and that's why I left." The truth of that settled in. Back then, Michael had chosen distance instead of temptation. Emily had told herself. She respected him for it. She had also wondered, late at night, what might have happened if things were different. "I didn't come here to start something," Michael said. "I just wanted to see you, to know you're okay." Emily laughed softly, but there was no humor in it. "I don't even know if I am." The words surprised her with how honest they were. She stood and walked toward the window. staring out at the rain-soaked street. I thought if I stayed long enough, if I tried harder, things would fix themselves. But silence doesn't break on its own. Michael listened without interrupting. That was something he had always done well. Daniel isn't a bad man, she continued. He just stopped seeing me. And I stopped asking to be seen. Behind her, Michael shifted slightly but said nothing. Emily turned back to him. Seeing you here feels dangerous. Michael met her eyes. Tell me to leave. She did in single quotes too. Instead, she sat down again, closer this time, but still careful. Why now? She asked. Why after all this time? Michael exhaled slowly. Because I spent years pretending you were just a chapter that closed. But some things don't close, they wait. Emily felt a tightness in her throat. She didn't want to admit how much that made sense. I thought I was lost, she said quietly. Like I missed my chance at something real. Michael shook. His head, you were never lost. You were just walking alone. The words stayed with her. They talked for hours, not about dramatic moments, but about life. The way time passes quietly. The way people drift without meaning to. Michael spoke. About moving cities, changing jobs, trying to start over. Emily talked about learning to live in a house that echoed. The clock on the wall ticked past midnight before either of them noticed. I should go, Michael said, standing. I didn't mean to stay this long. Emily walked him to the door. The rain had slowed, leaving the street glossy and reflective. When he reached for the handle, he paused. Emily, whatever happens next, I'm glad I knocked. She nodded. He too. As the door closed, Emily leaned against it, heart racing not from guilt, but from awareness. Something had been awakened, not acted on, but acknowledged. She wasn't sure what tomorrow would bring, but she knew one thing for certain. The knock hadn't ruined her life. It had reminded her she was still alive. The morning light felt different, sharp and honest, as if it knew something Emily Carter had only just begun to admit to herself. She woke before the alarm, heart still carrying the weight of the night before. The knock, the rain, Michael standing. At her door it all returned at once, clear and undeniable. She sat up in bed and realized something had changed. Not her situation, not her marriage, but her certainty. For the first time in months, she wasn't numb. Emily moved through the house quickly, as if speed could organize her thoughts. Coffee brewed, curtains opened. The quiet no longer felt empty. It felt expectant. She checked her phone. No message from Daniel. No message from Michael either. That was a relief, and a disappointment. By mid-morning, Emily was driving toward downtown Portland, hands tight on the wheel. She hadn't planned the day, but she knew what she needed to do. Waiting had been her habit. Today, she would speak. Daniel answered her call on the third ring. Emily, he said, surprised but calm. Can we talk? She asked. In person, there was a pause. Then yeah, that's probably overdue. They met at a small cafe. Near the river, a place they used to love. Daniel arrived first, sitting by the window, coffee untouched. He looked tired but peaceful. Like someone who had already made peace with an ending. They didn't waste time. I'm not calling to argue, Emily said as she sat down. I just need us to be honest. Daniel nodded. Me too. The words came faster than she expected. She talked about the loneliness, the silence, the years of feeling unseen. She didn't accuse. She didn't raise her voice. She told the truth. Daniel listened, eyes down, hands folded. When she finished, he sighed. I felt it too. I just didn't know how to fix it. Emily met his eyes. I don't think it was meant to be fixed anymore. Daniel nodded slowly. Neither. There was sadness, but also relief. No anger, no blame. It's just the understanding that love sometimes fades without betrayal, without drama. They agreed to move forward respectfully, to end things cleanly, to let go without hurting each other further. When Emily walked out of the cafe, the air felt lighter. Not easy, but clear. Days passed quickly after that. Paperwork, phone calls, quiet adjustments. Emily didn't rush into anything. She spent evenings walking through her neighborhood, noticing things she had ignored for years. She slept better. She laughed more easily, even when alone. A week later, her phone buzzed while she was cooking dinner. Michael, double quotes, can we talk? His message read. Emily stared at the screen for a long moment before replying. Yes. They met at a park overlooking the water. Early evening, people walking dogs, kids laughing nearby. It felt safe. Normal. Michael didn't step too close. I didn't want to pressure you, he said. I know, Emily replied, and I needed time. She told him about the conversation with Daniel, about choosing honesty instead of comfort. Michael listened, proud and quiet. I don't want to be a replacement, he said, or a mistake. Emily smiled softly. I don't want that either. They walked side by side, not touching, but connected. Talking about the future without promises, about how people grow, about timing. I spent years thinking love was supposed to feel calm, Emily said. But calm can also be empty, Michael nodded. And passion without respect doesn't last. They stopped near the water. The city lights reflected off the river, steady and bright. I'm not asking for anything, Michael said again. Emily looked at him. I'm not lost anymore. That was enough. They didn't rush. They didn't hide. They let things grow slowly, carefully, built on truth instead of escape. Friends noticed the change in Emily before they noticed Michael. She stood straighter. She spoke with confidence. She smiled like someone who trusted herself. Months later, on a quiet evening, much like the first, Emily stood at her front door again. This time she opened it before the knock finished. Michael stood there, not as a surprise, but as a choice. Emily realized then that the story was never about infidelity. It was about honesty. It's about knowing when to leave, when to speak, and when to open the door not to someone else, but to yourself. And this time, she didn't hesitate.